Hello class, this is a recording on constants global variables in your Python program. So this is chapter 5.6. If you have not read that chapter yet, I suggest you flip to it, give it a quick read, and then come back and watch this video. So global variables they are variables that are accessible to all functions within a Python program. So their scope is throughout the entire program. So the book starts out with a pretty simple example, and it declares a global variable called my_value. Now I know this is global because it is declared outside of any functions. So the scope of this is going to be higher than any of the functions. So if we want to write a simple function to actually show the value, we can print it. And by now, after reading the chapter, you know how to write a function and then run or invoke the function. So Python is a top-down. Just like you read a book, Python is going to read your program. It reads you've declared a global. It knows that you have declared a function, show value. Nothing will happen here until you actually invoke that function outside of it. Also remember that anything that is indented after this function definition is considered inside of that function. So you can do as many things as you want, just like the while loop or if statement. Just for example, Python is very choosy about its tabs or indents. So since this show value call is outside of the function because it is not indented over, then I know that it will be invoked. So when I run this, save it, it prints as I would expect. So my value exists outside of this function because it is global. Now let me show you an example of a non-global variable just to kind of give you a difference. Show other, what can I call this? I'll call this show variable. Print value. Now, so what I'm going to do is comment this out. That means Python will ignore it. And instead of declaring it in a global sense, I'm going to declare it within this show value function. And I also want to invoke my new function down here. So let's see what happens when we run this. Also, I get an error. Now, I expected that to happen because whenever I run show value, I declared the my value within inside of this function. So that means that it only exists and can be used inside of this function. If I try to access it from a different function, such as the show variable function, then I would get an error that says my value is not defined because it is not defined in this function. However, if it is global, it is available to both functions. And notice how we get 2 prints of 10 because, well, both of them print that global. So you can change the value of a global variable within a function or outside of a function if you want. It's just that within the function, if you want to change the value, you have to use the global keyword. Actually, let's do this in a different function. Let's call it change value. So let's remove that. Okay, so we still have show value, but now we have a new function called change value, and it should change the value to 500. Now the reason why I have to use this global keyword is because Python is very flexible. It's a very flexible language in that I could actually define a new my value variable inside of this function, and it would let this my value and this my value exist in the same program, except the scope of this one would only be to this function. I know that's kind of a lot to say, but if I want to access this global variable, I have to use this global keyword. So when I run this, I get a syntax error. Oops. So I'm doing this incorrect. You must declare the value above and then set it. So let's give that a shot. Okay. So we change the value to 500 in this function, and then when we show the value, it is 500. So to hammer in what I was saying a second ago, if I did not declare this global before I tried to change it, let me show you what would happen. The value does not change. Python thinks that you are trying to declare a new variable that only exists within inside this function. So to override that functionality, you have to tell it, nope, I actually want to use the global my value, and that will actually change the function. So that's about it. If you have any questions about global variables, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.